Hey guys, Steve Horst here on behalf of Punisher Waterfowl. I wanted to help you guys out and give you a recipe for something I've been loving to do with my goose breast for the last couple of years, and that's goose pastrami. So the biggest thing to start off with is prep. As with anything, all my goose breasts, especially for pastrami, because you're curing the meat more so than you're cooking it. And the curing salt you're going to use really keeps the color in, so I want it to look presentable as well as taste presentable. So a big thing for my goose breasts is I usually do soak them in salt water for a day after I harvest them. The biggest thing too is to prep, because you're eating this in a little lesser of a cooked state. You want to make sure that it's trimmed really well, so I like to make sure I take off any little hunks of fat. I'm not a fan of how the fat cures out in it. I have seen recipes where they leave the whole skin on, and it does work, gives you the more traditional kind of corned beef pastrami look, but I'm not a big fan of the texture. The other thing is I'll pull the fillet off. I will use it later for stir fries or something like that. Another big thing will be to pull out this fatty in this arteried area, as well as check over for any feathers, things like that. And you'll want to clean out any shot up spots. Again, I prefer to save the better of the breast. Anything that's been more shot up, that's a little more damaged, is going to get put in the grind pile. Again, because that bruising and stuff isn't going to draw out completely, and it's just not going to look all that good in your meat when you go to slice it. So I like to save all the good cleaner breasts for that. Okay, so I'll just get this one trimmed up, and we'll start with the rest of the spices and the recipe itself once I get this trimmed up. I'll be right back. Great guys, so you can see I got this all finished, trimmed up. So I picked away all the fat, and there was a little bit of silver skin on this side that I took off, as well as this side. Usually you get a fair patch of silver skin. I find the younger birds, this doesn't seem to be as heavy or as thick looking, so sometimes I don't take it off. But any bigger birds or older birds tend to have it a little more. And then you can see in here where that main artery is, and that fat and that silver skin, I took all that out because it's a really unpleasant bite once it's all cured up. Alright, so we're ready to go. We'll get these spiced up and ready for the fridge. Make sure that your sugar is all broke down fairly fine. You don't have to be super picky on this, because again, the whole idea of this cure is the salt and the sugar and the spice flavors is going to absorb into the meat, and it's actually going to draw a lot of moisture out. So although this is classed as a dry brine or dry cure, once you get on your meat, it's going to actually draw a lot of moisture out and actually turn it into a wet brine inside the bag that'll draw throughout your meat. So just to recap that again, you've got 6 tablespoons of the Morton's Tender Quick. You got 3 tablespoons of the coarse ground pepper, 6 tablespoons of brown sugar, 3 tablespoons of garlic powder, 3 teaspoons of coriander, 3 teaspoons of dried thyme leaves, and 3 teaspoons of onion powder. So the next part is really easy. We just make sure we got some paper towel. I like to use vacuum pack bags. It really, when you vacuum seal it, it really helps pull in the cure. It'll actually cure faster with that because of the vacuum. It'll actually draw it through. You can use a Ziploc bag. The biggest thing would be to get out as much air as absolutely possible. That way, as it draws the moisture out, the meat still stays submerged in that brine. So I'll just take out our breasts that we prepared earlier, give them a bit of a pat dry. Give them a good coating in the cure. Try and get it in any nooks and crannies. Get it into the bag. So hopefully everybody has enough in from their waterfowl season that they can make a few batches. I've been handing this out to the farmers that graciously let me use their land, and it has gone over quite well. It's definitely something most of them have never had before, so they're obviously a little bit hesitant sometimes to try it, but most of them are sold pretty quickly on a cold meat. It's great on sandwiches. This makes one hell of a Reuben to slice it up nice and thin, which we'll show you later. It's just out of this world. So you're thinking you got lots of brine left, lots of cure. This goes in the bag with it. We'll pour it down in, try and get it massaged around a little more. Really try to bury it in there. Okay. So, like I said, we'll vacuum seal this up, and we'll put it in our fridge for about 3 days. 4 days is fine too. It's not that critical, but you want at least 3 days, and you want to go down and flip it over every day. So I'll put this down tonight, and then when I get home from work tomorrow, I'll flip it. I'll just keep doing that until after 3 or third or fourth night. Then I'll pull it out, and we'll show you what to go from there. All right, thanks. Okay, folks, it's been 4 days of brine time, and we've been flipping them over each day. And what I did was I took the breasts out of the package, took them over to the sink, and rinsed off all the brine off the outside. This is also time where if you were stuck doing fine ground pepper, that you want to take a little extra time to kind of rub off some of that excess pepper that's going to be stuck to it and wash it off if you can. You'll notice it'll come out, be still very dark, very nice and red. It's like when you put it in, it'll also be a lot firmer. The cure will stiffen it up quite a bit. That's normal. So once from here, we're going to just set them in some water, and we're going to soak them for probably about 45 minutes or so, up to an hour in some cold water, and that's just to draw out the excess brine. Make sure they're not too salty. So in the meantime, we can start making up our rub to go on the outside. This will be what we put on right before it goes in the smoker. So I've got 3 tablespoons of coarse, freshly cracked pepper, like you see me do before. And to that, I'm going to add 1.5 teaspoons of coriander, 1.25 teaspoons of granulated garlic, about a 3/4 to a teaspoon of onion powder, and then 1 teaspoon of smoked paprika and 3/4 of a teaspoon of dried thyme. And this will be the rub that we coat the outside in. And then in the meantime, while it's soaking, I'm going to go and prepare my smoker. You can use a smoker, you can use an oven, barbecue. If you're going to use a barbecue, I suggest you do this over indirect heat. So just leave the burners going to one side and leave the side that the meat sits on with the burners off. You want to set it around 200, 220, 225 tops. Again, we're not trying to overly fast cook these. We're just trying to get some smoke to them and slowly bring them up to temperature, not to dry them out. If you are using a smoker, again, try to keep it off of the hot zone. If you have like a pellet grill or something, there's usually a really hot spot in them. You want to keep it away from that. I'd also suggest maybe putting a dish of water in your barbecue on the hot side. Again, just to keep some moisture in the barbecue so they don't get too dried out. Because of the shape of the goose breast, they'll get kind of dry around the edges. You can do it in the oven as well. You just don't get that smoke flavor. If you're doing it on the barbecue, you can use a chip box or a pellet tube or something like that to get some smoke flavor into them. Probably take about 2-3 hours tops to bring it up to an internal temp of 145 to 150. Okay, so these have been soaking for 45 minutes. I've drained all the water off of them. Our barbecue's up to temp. So we're just going to take them, give a good pat dry. I've transferred our seasoning to a bigger dish that the breast will fit in. And just give it a good rub. Make sure it's coated nicely. Don't be afraid to pack it in a little bit. Give it a little shake. And keep going until we get them all done, and then off to the smoker, like I said again, for probably anywhere from 2 to 3 hours at 200 to 225 degrees until you get a nice internal temp of about 145 to 150 degrees. And there we go, folks. Fresh off the smoker, come up to about 148. You can see some of the wet spots on top where we stuck the meat probe in. They're still nice and moist inside. They didn't get dried out, and that took about 2 hours. And we'll get this cooled down, and once you get all cooled down, you can slice it, vacuum pack it. It freezes well. It's a great donation to farmers and other landowners, and it's even better in a sandwich or on some crackers, and maybe we'll give you a sneak peek of what that could look like too.